Welcome to the Rock the Boat Show, Rithika. How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
Good, thank you. I'm loving your background. Oh
Thank you. It's my study room.
my gosh, I'm very jealous. I was hoping that by this point in time I'd have a nicer background, but I don't. Let you give yourself, your introduction since I don't know that much about you. So you go
Yeah.
ahead and let us know who you are.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rithika Saravanan. I'm upcoming sophomore this year, and I'm based in Austin, Texas. So I live down south. Some of my favorite activities to do are like playing volleyball. I'm super active. I really just like going out for runs or just like playing volleyball. I also read a lot, and you can kind of tell right behind me all my books. But yeah, I do love to read as well, and I'm super artistic, so I also draw in my free time. And recently I've actually been getting into more like digital art. I recently got like an iPad and I've been kind of doodling around with that. But yeah, that's pretty much all about me.
You have quite the interests there and hobbies. I love it. I love art as well. So I like to paint, but I
Yeah.
just kind of on canvas with acrylic. But the digital piece of it with the iPad, is it one of those where you can kind of draw with the
Yeah, it's
actual
like more
pen?
like pens. Yeah, like the pens. I mean, like it's new, but like I feel like it's just like fun. Like you get to transfer it over to like different kind of places and just like
Okay.
around. And plus, like the tools itself are just like something you won't get on like actual paper. But yeah, it's really nice.
I would love to. So I might have to figure that out at some point. You might have to give me some tips for sure. So sophomore, incoming sophomore. So how is high school for you so far?
I mean, it's been pretty well. I think freshman year was pretty chill. We didn't do too much. It was more like extracurriculars that I was really kind of like focused on and more like involved in. But like I do hear like junior year it like really starts to hit. So yeah, right now it's like it's just high school. I mean, like I hang out with my friends, I do extracurriculars. This year it's pretty much just been like extracurriculars really. School's been there, but like I feel like it's just been like pretty chill this year. So yeah.
What has been the biggest difference from going from middle school to high school?
I think the main difference was just like the classes, I think, and also like the amount of extracurriculars. I think the classes, the teachers are more kind of pushed away. They don't really kind of like tell you like an assignment is missing, an assignment is due. It's more like kind of laid back, at least in our school. I know some schools, like it depends on the school and the teacher, but our teachers are more laid back. I go to a K to 12 school, a charter school.
Okay.
So it's the same school, like from kinder all the way to like senior year. So that environment for me, it's the same environment, it's just like the teachers and the building changes really. But yeah, I think it's really just like a more kind of independent workspace for me at least. And it's not like very teacher dependent, if that makes sense. Plus the extracurriculars, just like so many opportunities and so many like different avenues for me to kind of like express my interests. Like for example, in middle school we didn't even have clubs, but now I'm really involved in like Model UN, which is sort of like a foreign diplomatic mock debate where everyone represents a different country and we're talking about like real world issues. So that's a club that I was super involved in this year, kind of talking about all these like world issues, as well as a club called DECA, which is like a business club here. And we just like really get into like finance and marketing and all these different like business ventures in that club. But yeah, definitely just the amount of opportunities and extracurriculars as well as the sort of like laid back, independent sort of format. But yeah.
Very cool. I also went to a school that it wasn't chartered, it was private, but it was from kindergarten all the way till graduation. So it did kind of feel like, even though I was going from middle school to high school, it was essentially the same campus, just different building. But yeah, I feel like there's just a little bit more independence when it comes to it. Are your classrooms small? Because mine were really small.
Yeah, I mean, our entire class for my grade is only like 100 kids. So that means like usually we don't have as many like class choices, like elective choices. So our classes are like, I would say like max 20. So it does get down to like 15 or something, which is like really different because like the school I'm zoned to, like the school I should be going to, like my public school in the area, their class size is like 900 kids. And then all their classes, like at least what my neighbors tell me, It's like usually like a good number they have is like 35 kids in their classes. So just like comparing it, yeah, it definitely it's a
Yeah.
very similar.
I personally can't imagine. My graduating class in 1993 was 62
Yeah.
students. And for me, I actually thrived in the smaller classroom environment. I ended up going to UCLA, which was like the complete opposite, and I got lost in that. And looking back, I probably would have done better in a smaller school. So for you, like, do you envision going to college in a the smaller university as well? Because of the environment that you're in now, or do you want to do something completely different, get out of your comfort zone like I did?
I feel like also because I've been going to the school for so long, I feel like I would like because one of the schools like in Texas that is such a big deal is UT,
Yeah.
and he's definitely on the bigger side, definitely a huge campus. And I do visit a lot, so I do know how the campus looks like, but I think me personally, I probably wouldn't go to a big school, probably more like the private small universities.
Yeah. Do you find that your environment has anything to do with that in the sense that, like, for me, that's all I knew was the smaller setting. So that's why I wanted to do something different. But I feel like with all of you experienced COVID during elementary school, right?
So,
So I'm wondering, did that have any kind of or has had any effect on wanting to kind of stay more, just kind of like in a smaller space?
I think the main thing for me at least is I'm not like that much of an extrovert. I think I'm more of one of those like introverted extroverts where I do talk to people, but you could not catch me like walking up to someone and having a full-on conversation with someone. So definitely I think that's the whole reason I decided to also stay at the school. A lot of people do leave for high school, but I think I just thrive in like these more like smaller condensed environments. So kind of like I think COVID too was like I know some people hated the virtual sort of classes, but personally I liked it just because it meant like I did not have to interact with anybody. But yeah, I think it really just depends. For me at least, I was more of like I'm always am like a closed off sort of person and I don't talk to people unless like I have to. But yeah, I think it really just depends on the person. But for me, especially like COVID was definitely a sort of like break and like almost like a really like I don't have to socialize with these people on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think it definitely is just like your own personality.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people with your generation assume that you're going to want to like not interact and be introverted and be kind of have that social anxiety. But at the same time, there's so many of us adults that have had that type of personality too, introverted and didn't feel comfortable really socializing and going up to random people and would have thrived in a kind of COVID environment as well. So I feel like people are so quick to just automatically label you guys as just kind of antisocial because you don't have that skill set of connection because of COVID. But I feel like, no, there's plenty of people that, were born, around my time and would have felt the same way.
Yeah, I think the main thing is like I really do think it depends because so many of my friends are such extroverts. Like you could like they'd walk into a party and like genuinely they'd talk to people they'd never met before and like be best friends in like 5 minutes. And like there are those type of people. And then I think it really just comes down to personality in the
Mhm.
end of the day and like how you are and like also the environment you're in. Because like if you're constantly in the environment where you have to make friends and you have to socialize, I think you're almost trained to work that way and like be that person who like goes out there and makes connections. And I think that's why I kind of like call myself like an introverted extrovert because I've also like because of all the scenarios I've been in, I have had to make these connections and friends so quickly. But it's just like something like I wouldn't do personally. Like if I'm in my free time going out to a party, I would not talk to like a group of people. I think it's really just like something I've been trained to do. But yeah, I think it all comes down to just like your personality plus like your environment that you're in and what really like you're trained to do in that environment.
Yeah. And I know that when you had filled out the form to be on the show, you were talking about nonprofits and how, a lot of your age group are starting nonprofits. And I have found that it's amazing how most of the people that have been reaching out to me as of late in your age group that want to be on my show, it's because they started a nonprofit and want to showcase it. So I'm wondering like where that's coming from.
Yeah, I think like I actually like I really wanted like to come on the show because I was looking at a bunch of like the nonprofits and the episodes that you've kind of had covering all these nonprofits. And I recently did an interview with someone else, and they were kind of talking about how the term like nonprofit is sort of so easily tossed around, if that makes sense. Like for
Yeah.
example, could be like a club, and it could really just be a club or like a group of people volunteering, but they'll turn it into like a nonprofit. And I just like kind of wanted to like come on here and like kind of bring awareness because not all things are nonprofits, and especially like the youth nowadays, especially when it comes to like school and college, we're so used to like trying to have a startup or like a company or a nonprofit, and it's something that's so deeply engraved into everyone's like mind to like do one of these things to even be considered kind of like an elite student or applicant. And I think it's really important to really kind of like come back and really evaluate like why you're even starting this business or nonprofit, and like what really is your mission, if that makes sense.
And the reality of it all is you guys are full-time students. You're still young, so you don't really know. A lot of you don't know what your future is going to look like. So that's the only thing that I'm always like curious about. Like, how are these students balancing, both things, being a student and doing the nonprofit? And I love where it's coming from because it's really coming from a place of wanting to give back and wanting to help. But I also feel there's also a piece of it, like you said, where it's that pressure of I have to build a resume already even before I go into college and I have to have all these extracurricular activities. So I feel like in a way a lot of it's like being pressured into doing something along a club or a nonprofit. And that's I think where I get worried for all of you. I don't know, it adds on more pressure, more stress, all of those things on all of you. That's what kind of freaks me out sometimes.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to like why you even have your nonprofit in the first place. Because I have a nonprofit called Impact Forward, and it's like a group of students, and it's like a community where we just volunteer, and we motivate others to volunteer as well. And now it's like national, and we have chapters throughout the nation. But kind of looking back and like seeing like all my friends who also have like nonprofits, their goals aren't sort of aligned, if that makes sense. And for us, like we have a clear goal, we have a clear mission, but not all nonprofits are the same. And especially when it comes down to nonprofits, for me, my nonprofit's my only extracurricular. Like I really do dive deep into it so much. And I think in the nonprofit space, you do have to be like that because if you do want to make real change, you do have to be so committed. And it's something that does take up all your time. And for me, like that's something that like as soon as school stops and as school as I get out of school, that's something that I do work on, and that's something like it's almost like my passion project. It's just like if I have free time, I'm working on that. And I think the sort of goal of nonprofit sort of shifts when you're doing it for an ulterior motive. So for example, like just college applications, and that's something really important to talk about, especially because with all these startups and with all these nonprofits, it's really hard to identify the clear goal or the clear mission of like what you're actually trying to accomplish because it's more than just metrics. It's about real impact and like what you're actually putting out into the world. So yeah, of course, having like these many funds raised as a nonprofit and having these many members is important, but in the end of the day, are you making real change? And I think that's what really that's why I tell people kind of be aware if you are starting a nonprofit or a club or a company, like what your true mission or your true goal is. Because if you're just doing it for college, then you might as well just do it independently instead of starting a nonprofit and like calling yourself a nonprofit because it truly does change the sort of like nonprofit landscape for so many other people who are really trying to make change in the world. But yeah.
Very well said. So what does your nonprofit do?
Yeah, so Impact Forward, it's our mission statement is motivating people to advocate for change together. So we basically run a bunch of events around the country that are really just trying to actively make change within our community. So for example, a really big event that we hosted was a e-waste drive. So in at least Austin, Texas, we don't have a proper e-waste recycling sort of center, and most of the e-waste, at least in our area, is just usually thrown into the recycling bin. And first of all, that is super toxic for the environment. All the sort of parts in your electronics and fluids do kind of harm the environment. And when they're being recycled, it's usually just like tossed into the ocean or like in the actual environment, which really does harm our ecosystem and our community. So we sort of realized this problem. And what we did is, first of all, we went to our local recycling center and just asked, like, do we even have a like e-waste recycling center? And they said, no, not really. We usually just like keep it in our landfill, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we wish we could have one, but we just don't have the resources. So then we took matters into our own hands and we contacted Dell, because Dell already does have a recycling initiative, but it's not very well known. So what we did is we partnered up with Dell and also Goodwill, and we kind of hosted an e-waste drive. We put up flyers all around our community and our city and posted it on Instagram, kind of letting people know to donate their e-waste, talking about all the harmful after effects of e-waste being donated or tossed into the environment. And we got over 1,000 pounds of e-waste, and we recycled it all. We sent it all to Dell for them to repurpose for their electronics. But yeah, it was a really big initiative and it did take a lot of time, but all our members were super active. All of them were like in their communities asking for e-waste, kind of spreading awareness about the cause. And yeah, that was a really big event. We do several other events such as like drives. We regularly partner with Goodwill for like different drives, like clothing drives. We did like a costume drive for Halloween. But yeah, different drives. And then we also do so many more events like the e-waste drive. We also do, this is a really unique event, our STEM and spell competition. So we have a spelling bee and then a math competition, like a written math competition. And it's like $30 to enter in, but all the funds are donated to charity. And it's also like a competition during the summer. So you get to like kind of prep your mind before school starts, and all your funds are being donated as well. But it's like a super big competition, and we usually have like 50 participants in both sections. And yeah, like last year we donated over like $2,000 to the Dallas Children's Hospital in our area. But yeah, this year we're hoping to donate to another nonprofit. We're kind of looking into which ones. But yeah, we're also hosting it again in August. So yeah, super excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. That's the thing is your generation just seems like a generation that is really trying to do the best that they can to help and to give back. And I love just how different all of you are doing it, like in such different ways. That's pretty cool because I'm learning so many different things. Let me ask you this, like, and this is something that I'm gonna probably try to address in my documentary is so like how vocal do you guys get when it comes to like social media and putting yourselves out there? Because that's the thing too, is like we all have our opinions. We feel very strongly about certain things. I know I do, but there's also that kind of fine line of how much do you actually like vocalize? So do you have kind of a fine line for yourself too when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, and I actually learned this from one of my internships recently, and I really kind of resonated with it. But one of my bosses, she was kind of talking about how to separate yourself from your brand and yourself and separate the two things. For example, I could have so many opinions about what's going on in the world right now and different events going on in the world right now and our current state of our country. But it's like that's totally different from Impact Forward and the projects I'm working on. And it was just really interesting to kind of really find that balance between what you think is right and then your brand, and making sure you're kind of separating the two things, making sure that your brand is a completely different thing. It has its own mission, but you yourself can have opinions. And I think it's super important. I never mix up my own Instagram with Impact Forward's Instagram. I never tag myself. I never repost anything. I repost Impact Forward, but I don't repost anything of mine on that account just because important to kind of mix the two ideas together, if that makes sense. Impact Forward is just creating change for the greater good. And if something I do doesn't align with that mission, then it's a totally separate thing. So yeah, I do definitely believe that voicing out different things is very important. I repost things on the media and news all the time. I post social activism. I repost like different fundraisers. I repost like things that are happening in Gaza, things that is happening with the Trump administration. And that's my opinion. And like I can repost whatever, but I think it does truly come down to you and your brand and separating the two things. And it has been really hard finding that balance, especially when my work is so deeply into social activism, but really making sure that my opinions are different from representing like 500 members, and making sure I'm really finding that balance has been super keen. And I think that's what really makes Impact Forward such a global operation, and that's why so many people join it, is because there's no specific side to Impact Forward, and it's really just creating change for the greater good. So I think it's something that no matter where you are in the globe, you can really resonate with the mission. And that's something that I've had to learn, is like not mixing my own thoughts with my whole brand. But
Yeah, I'm still trying to navigate that myself. I'm also someone that is utilizing my platform to share all of your voices. And so it's something that I've really had to sit with, especially before filming, because we film in less than 3 weeks. And I'm going to be talking to a ton of Gen Zers. And it's the same thing. I'm very passionate about certain subjects and certain things that are happening in our world today. But yeah, it's trying to figure out how to have a good balance and also not have my opinion kind of infiltrate and seep into the film, or because that's the thing, is obviously you could be pretty biased in certain ways, and I don't want to be, but at the same time it is difficult when you have a very strong opinion on something and the strong virtue and everything. So that's why I was just curious. I think that's something that I'm going to ask some of you in the film, because there are some that I'm talking to that do have nonprofits and are big in social activism as well, and climate change. And I'm just curious where they're coming from too, because it's a difficult one when everybody has an opinion.
yeah.
But you seem to have a really good head on your shoulders, and already just as a sophomore, kind of already acknowledging so much. And I mean, I think it's very impressive. Are you someone that already kind of has an idea of like what you want your future to look like when it comes to career wise?
Yeah, I think like these past few years have really just been about exploration. I think my interests are very diversified. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm into Model UN, which is more like diplomacy, international relations, but then I'm also super into like DECA, which is more like business, finance, plus like leading like all of these nonprofits. I'm super into like social activism, but then like having all these like tech internships, I'm also super into tech. So yeah, it's definitely been a balance, but I think for the future, I'm definitely leaning towards like more finance and tech, sort of like probably thinking about doing that in college as well, and then kind of just seeing where that takes me in the future.
When you think like finance tech, are you also thinking about like a career that will bring kind of like more stability, or a career that isn't more in demand? Like, I'm curious if like you guys even have those type of conversations with yourself.
I mean, like, I know I used to be like a super tech savvy person, and I used to be super into tech, and reading the news more and more about like AI and how AI is replacing all of these like tech jobs. I think like by the time I'm like in my 20s, 30s, I definitely think like comp sci is gonna be on its like downfall, especially with AI kind of replacing. And like I recently came over an app, or like an application, that if you like give it a prompt, it gives you an entire app, like the whole code, front end, back end, builds the data, like everything. So like in that case, like you don't even have to have all these like app developers and even learn all these like app development languages. And I think it's just like it's so rapidly developing. Like I remember 5 years ago, if you told me about it, yeah, I would have thought like, yeah, that's something like mystical, flying car or
I think
something.
everybody thought that.
And now it's like, okay, well now it's here, and it's like it's taking off. I mean, like another thing, like it's just like so interesting to me, like AI. Like I was in San Francisco recently, and I went on a Waymo. I don't know if you could.
I took a Waymo in
And
Scottsdale to the airport from a conference.
and I was like, that's something that I thought like I would have to be at least like midlife before I saw one of those. But yeah, I think it's so crazy that they're so like rapidly developing. And I think like the tech industry in general is just like totally gonna change by the time I'm like out of college. And I think it's just like something that I'd love to learn more about and learn about in college. But I think having a career in that industry is so unstable. And I think like it could be changing so drastically that I don't know if like that's a career that I really want to pursue. I mean, I definitely want to learn about it. I think like it's just like when you think about it, like it's so easily replaceable with AI that I think like just finding stability in that industry and that workspace is going to be super hard. But yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. You're right, how rapidly it's changing and just evolving. So let me ask you this. I asked this of someone the other day, and I know you're younger than the person I asked, but I'm assuming like with your parents and just stories that they've shared and just knowing their like experiences as a child and just the past, or maybe even seeing like a lot of there's like Instagram and TikToks that kind of make fun of like my generation, Gen X, and like how we grew up in the 80s and so forth. Is there anything that you've seen or that your parents have talked about that you wish you could have experienced that?
Yeah, actually, like I think the main thing for me, and I've said this before to some of my friends, and they called me so like old, and they're like, "Yeah, you're in the wrong generation." But like I kind of do wish sometimes that like some, and this sounds so bad, but I do sometimes wish that like there was no like phones or TV. And like I do know like my parents did have a phone, like they could call people up, but they didn't have social media and all this. And sometimes I do wish that because I remember like before I had a phone, I feel like my friends were so involved and we always hung out like in person. We would always hang out. We would always like ride our bikes, just like go on a walk. And I feel like it's just like, and I always say like, you know what, like maybe we should sit down and like have a talk. And they're like no, like Instagram is so much more fun to scroll. And I think like I definitely do feel that like sometimes I do wish that I could have that environment where we didn't even have phones, so I didn't need to worry about that. Because I do think like the connections my parents have with people from college, from high school, are so much more deeper and it's so much more like involved than the friends I have now. And I think it's so rare to find a friend who can actually kind of detox from like social media and from their phone. And I think it's so hard to find that, especially nowadays when it's so common to just like have a screen time of like 15 hours on your phone and that's like completely normal. And I think it's just like I sometimes do wish like that wasn't a problem that I had to worry about. But if I say this out loud to my friends, I swear they all call me. They're like, "Yeah, you're stuck in the wrong generation actually. You need to go back." But
Yeah,
yeah.
you're like even way further back than me because you said no phones and no TVs. So that's even like before my parents' generation, and they're the boomers. No, but I get that. I mean, it's also like very shocking now when you're able to have a conversation with like your generation that's longer than 10 minutes. So, for instance, like yesterday, I went to a solid core class with my Pilates instructor. She's 25. She's been on my podcast. She's going to be in my film, and she's kind of like a daughter to me. But it was so cool. So we go to this class, but right after we went and grabbed a Starbucks right after, and we were there for 2 hours just talking. But she never got on her phone. And 2 hours, like we got there, we sat down at 7. By 9 o'clock, she's like, I want to go to the swap meet. So we stopped our conversation, but it was 2 hours of just talking. And it's kind of sad that it was like shocking to me that even happened, right? Like where with my friends, it's very normal to sit for hours and have like fun conversations and reminisce, but to have that with your generation, it's very rare. So when it happens, it's like such a big deal. Maybe people hearing it will at least acknowledge the fact that so many of you were essentially forced into having social media and having phones and living that way. I think a lot of the adults forget that it wasn't your choice to have social media. So then we have to give you guys some grace and have some empathy and compassion for the fact that that's like how you guys grew up. But yeah, I understand where there's moments. I mean, I believe I have my moments where I'm like, and the fact that this is what I do and I have to utilize social media really bothers me sometimes. I'm like, what did I get myself into? And I'm 49 years old. But I appreciate your candor and your honesty with everything. Before we start closing out, is there anything else that you'd like to share or express?
No, not really. I think we covered it all.
Yeah, no, we covered a lot, which was great. And again, I think these are just great conversations because people can get some more insight as to how you guys are all navigating the world today. Because you guys definitely have had a lot, not just COVID, but just so much more too. And so I always just admire the fact that so many of you are just still pushing through, have hope, trying to do what you can, trying to do good, trying to give back, and not just giving up. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So continue the good fight. Thank you, Rithika.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.